Hello, everybody, and welcome to The Room, a podcast brought to you by LFC Transfer Room, where, as always, we'll be discussing all things with the football club and the transfer activities surrounding the club this transfer window. I'm Ricky, one of your co-hosts, and today I'm joined, as always, by YouTube sensation and co-host Matty and the expat from Formby, Daz O'Connor, as the third of the hosting trio. How are you today, lads? Hot?
Very hot.
It's always hot in Texas.
That's a very good point, to be fair. Yeah, we're moaning about the British weather. So, you all sat there with a jumper on.
In Texas.
Well, I put it down to like 50 in the house. Yeah.
Unreal.
Yeah. And plus, like, I'm tired of wearing T-shirts all the time. So I wanted to look nice and proper for this one.
Appreciate the effort. Because we are also joined on this very special podcast by Red Sea podcasters SS and Tiago's father / James, who will be collaborating with today and discussing key questions and answers for this upcoming window and basically what's next for Liverpool Football Club and the transfers. So how are you both today, chaps?
Yeah, really well, thank you. As you say, it's baking hot. It's too hot to do anything, isn't it? But lots of Liverpool meat to get into, I'm sure.
Yeah, looking good. Obviously, the weather is good outside. Obviously, we complain when it's cold and we complain when it's hot. Typical British fashion. But do you know what? There's a lot of bombshells being dropped over the last week, so I'm sure there's plenty of meat for us to get into. Lots to dissect over the next hour. We've got with yourselves as well, so we're really looking forward to it.
Absolutely. And to kick things off, let's get the latest news from our quick transfer roundup, where Matty and Daz will inform us of the latest transfer rumours surrounding Liverpool Football Club.
Jordan Henderson could leave the club this summer if Liverpool don't offer him a contract extension that reflects his value. And this comes from David Maddox and multiple other reliable outlets. Throughout the day, it's got stronger and stronger, and it basically is true.
That's a weird one for me. I don't think he's going anywhere. Another one is Liverpool have offered Marco Grujic to PSV in exchange for Daniel Malin plus cash. Don't know how much cash, but that's coming from reliable sources out of Portugal. But also James Pearce has confirmed interest from Liverpool for Malin.
The Saul deal with Barcelona has collapsed, which is good to see, but there is offers from the Premier League. I know Chelsea and United have been linked as well, with United willing to pay the wages he wants. So he is likely to move, and that's from Mundo Deportivo and Javier Gamara from Fernando Polo. So he's definitely going to be going, but I don't think it's going to be to us, unfortunately.
And newest one, I think this is good for Liverpool and for Harry Wilson, is Fulham look like the likeliest place he's going to go. Liverpool still want 15 million for him. That's coming from Neil Jones from Goal.
And Lazio as well have apparently offered 12 million for Shaqiri, and we want 15, and that's Lazio with Simone, which is fairly reliable to take the 12, to be honest.
15 mil seems to be the number for Liverpool. And last but not least, I hope this doesn't happen. I hope he just stays with the club. But looks supposedly James Milner is leaving next season. And that's from David Lynch. So, yeah, I hope he stays on with us backroom staff, But I'm pretty sure he wouldn't mind going back to Leeds and having a season with them.
Yeah, any of them that take your fancy, SS?
Any of those five?
Yeah.
I'll start with the Milner one. That's a bit different. I think, obviously, last summer he got a 2-year deal, didn't he? Which I was quite surprised at, bearing in mind his age. Been amazing for us. Probably the best free transfer in our recent history, I would suggest. Offered us so much over the years. Just left back for a season as well, and was arguably one of the best left backs in the league as well. Just shows you his versatility. But I was quite surprised because you see the likes of Gini and Hendo, and FSG seem to have this stance that anyone over the age of 30, they don't really want to give a multiple deal to. They don't want to have them on 140 plus a week. But Milner seemed to have been the last one to sneak through their little kind of, restricted net, isn't he? He's on about 140k a week. Is he going to contribute that much this season coming? For me, probably not, even with Genie going. I think, we're all hoping Ox and Cater can get some more minutes and Kurtis Jones coming through as well. But I don't see a 36-year-old James Milner particularly playing in the big games. Maybe captaining the youngsters in the cup competitions is probably what we're going to see mostly. So yeah, I think it's a done deal that he leaves next summer. I'd quite like to see him join the coaching staff. That would be really good. He just seems like that kind of guy that could, as you say, he captains the youth teams in the cups. He seems to have that. He's brought Henderson through. He's brought Trent through. Under his wing. This is how you become a pro. This is how you act on and off the field. So he will leave. Whether he's got more to give, like you say, Leeds, I think he probably has. Bearing in mind he is 36, but he's looked after his body so well, hasn't he? He doesn't drink. He doesn't do anything. So whether or not, I think Leeds is the fairy tale, but the way Leeds play under Bielsa, I don't know if a 36-year-old can do that amount of running. You look at how much running they do. They're the top runners in the, in terms of kilometres covered in the league. You look at Calvin Phillips for England. He was the highest runner at the Euros. So can Milner go into this current Leeds team? I'm not sure. Maybe he'll go back to another ex-club for a year or something, or maybe he will just hang up his boots and move on to the coaching staff. But yeah, what a seventh for Liverpool. Won trophies everywhere he's been, and yeah, a little bit of a swan song. I think he probably could have finished it last year. I think a 1-year deal probably would have been sufficient. So a year where we're paying 140k a week to someone that's not probably going to contribute as much was probably the one thing that they've looked at, and probably what's affecting the Henderson and the Genie deals, really.
I'd keep Milner, but when he's leaving next summer, it doesn't say what he is doing. Like you said, I do think he'll go into a coaching role, because for the reasons about Leeds, I think he doesn't go to any other club in the Prem, and maybe Villa, but then Villa probably too good for James Milner to be starting every week now as well. So there's not any place he could go. So I do think he probably could go into the coaching staff.
No, I agree. Newcastle's another one, isn't it? That he's been at as well, potentially. Yeah. I think he'd walk into that team.
Yeah, true.
Matty, you could probably walk into the Newcastle.
Scored 20 a season at Newcastle, mate. Anything else to hold to you then, James?
Yeah, so I don't know what I don't want to get tucked into the big one straight away, because obviously I think we all got an opinion on the big transfer rumor, which is obviously the Henderson one. So I'm sure we're going to leave that one till last. But the Shaqiri one is interesting solely because of the fee that's been quoted, 12, or the fee that they've apparently put on the table, 15 million, and Lazio have offered 12. He's worth more than that. He's worth more than that. Arguably one of the standout players in the tournament recently, in the Euro tournaments. He's played some good football. Shaqiri's the type of player which produces on the biggest stage. When all the cameras are on him, he comes up with the goods. We have to kind of give him his flowers in that respect. Look at his performances for Switzerland. They've been absolutely fantastic. If you look at his performances when we needed him in the Liverpool shirt, arguably the 2 contributions in the Manchester United game were standout moments for him as well. So what was a fantastic assist was the one against West Ham. Ball comes out to him on the wing, and he just plants it in the middle directly for Salah to walk onto it and say, "There you go, mate. Put that in the back of the net." So he's a player that has quality. I just think that Liverpool have evolved quicker than he's evolved. A player that's won trophies everywhere that he's been. Inter Milan trophies, Bayern trophies, Basel trophies, Liverpool trophies. Only place he hasn't won anything is Stoke. Do you know what I mean? And that's not a bad CV to have for arguably who's always been, apart from his time at Basel and at Stoke, he's always been a bit part player. But in those moments where he's been a bit part player, he has contributed. So 12 million or even 15 million is daylight robbery. That's daylight robbery. That needs to start with a 2. It needs to start with a 2. I'm really sorry. And Liverpool are kind of in a difficult position whereby it's almost a desire to sell is higher than a desire to buy. And that's a very, very difficult position to be in as a club. Yeah. because if the desire to sell is more, then clubs will have your pants down. They'll take advantage because they'll turn around and say, well, we know you need to clear X, Y, Z amount of players for you to move forward and do the business that you want to do. Liverpool are not in a position where we can drag our heels in regards to fees because, like Matty said, take the 12 and run. And the only reason why I think Matty's probably saying that because, as a Liverpool fan, he understands the importance and the imperative of us securing other positions because our back, like me and SS called them the backup brigade. The backup brigade are never, ever available. That's the most frustrating thing. And we always say that availability is the best ability. And unfortunately, players like Keita, players like Ox, players like Shaqiri spend a lot of time on the treatment table rather than more time on the pitch. And I feel last season when we needed them the most, they were all out getting massages because they were all injured. So it's a frustrating one. You look at the quality across the squad because quality isn't the issue. Availability is the issue. So whilst I'd love it to start with a 2, and I think it should start with a 2 for a player of Shaqiri's quality, when I come back down to earth with a great big crash and a thud and give my head a wobble and think to myself, do you know what? It can never start with a 2 because he's just not available often enough, which is the frustrating thing.
Do you think there'll be any more? Go on, Mitch, sorry.
Sorry, I was just going to say, with Shaqiri, like you said, he had 3 goals and assist in 5 games for Switzerland. And it's so frustrating for a Liverpool fan to watch because it's like, where was that form last season? Like you quite rightly said, I know that he had an okay game in that drubbing against that we handed out to Crystal Palace, but who didn't have a good game. I think he came off the bench and provided a couple of assists. The last time I can really remember Shaqiri making an impact was the coup de grace in Mourinho's coffin, which, to be fair, a brace at Old Trafford is certainly something to like shout home about. But that was a couple of years ago now. So I completely understand what you're both saying, really. I think right now, ideally, I'd like a little bit more than 12 million. But Liverpool, as much as we hate to say it, is very much at the moment, we have to sell these players before we can buy anyone. And until we do sell these players, we can't. And Grujic and Wilson, who we've mentioned as well, fit in that exact same category. We need the funds to go out and to buy. We're not owned by oligarchs. And, we say that quite a lot. And that's just the way of Liverpool. I don't know whether I would want to be owned by oligarchs because it's not FIFA, it's not Football Manager. I think that Liverpool do their transfer dealings quite sensibly. I can't remember too many transfers that have gone wrong under Klopp. So, yeah, I think there is a panic to sell because we know we can't buy until we do sell.
I think with Shaqiri, though, a lot of with Shaqiri, if we're going to bring in a central midfielder and a forward, Shaqiri's not getting in ahead of Firmino, Salah, Mane, Jota, the new forward, and arguably Harvey Elliott. In central midfield, is he getting ahead of Henderson, Thiago, Fabinho, with Oxlade-Chamberlain and whoever else we bring in? He's not going to get in ahead of them. So I think, like James said, with his injuries, you're not going to get 20-odd million for him. I think on his ability alone, you could, in today's market, Shaqiri's a £25 million player. But with his injuries, whether that be when and got his hair done or he was genuinely injured, I do think it knocks it down to 12, 15.
Yeah, it's a shame because there's a player in there.
Yeah, 100%. And that's the thing that I struggle with is ultimately, like you were saying, it's nothing to do with ability. It's everything to do with availability. And in the way that football is at the moment, being very much a systems game, and that's football here in the UK, and also football on the continent is adopting a system kind of way of playing where they buy players to suit a system. They don't necessarily buy players for their individual quality. And if you flipped it on its head, Shaqiri's got bags of individual quality. But when you look at a system, you think, like you were saying there, Matt, he doesn't get in ahead of that person. He doesn't get in ahead of that person. And he can't play there. And, but maybe if he's not quite good enough to play there. So he's just a player that becomes surplus to requirements for whatever reason the reason it may be. And, just to close, I think Liverpool, and like you were saying, that we haven't really had many flops under Klopp. And that's nothing to do necessarily with the players we're buying, because I think there have been some players which haven't really shone through in the way that we thought they would. But Liverpool do what I refer to as risk-free business. There's not a lot of risk attached to our transfer dealings. If you look at the money which we pay for players, arguably we're going to make that back. So Ben Davies being another one, that's a risk-free transfer. Minamino, risk-free transfer. You know, Ben Davies was what, £500,000 when it was all said and done. You're gonna recoup that, aren't you?
Easy.
You know, Minamino was £7 million. You're gonna recoup that. You know, you look at what we sold Ryan Brewster for, who came through the academy. God, if we, do you know what I mean? That was mental. You look at what we sold Dominic Solanke for, and we signed, Dom Solanke. You look at what we sold him for. You know, players that have left in recent seasons. Jordan Ibe, another one. Players that have left in recent years and recent seasons. We have taken a hell of a lot of profit from those transfers because they've all been risk-free. So, you know, we almost as fans have to take the rough with the smooth. Like I said in my tweet earlier on, I don't think the club are penny pinching, but I think it's got everything to do with their strategy. It's going to be a long summer. Strap yourselves in, guys. Strap yourselves in. Because that's where we are.
Just lastly, before we move on from Shaqiri, you mentioned his performances for Switzerland, which I thought was a good point. I looked at Switzerland's formation, and Shaqiri plays in a 10 behind two strikers for Switzerland, which he has success in. Liverpool, yeah, exactly. System. Liverpool are never going to play that formation ever. The striker that Switzerland play with, who they get the most success out of, is Severovic. Again, a big, tall striker. So Shaqiri likes playing in that hole, playing in the 10 on the outside of the area, and he likes drifting to the left wing and the right wing to put the crosses in to those kind of players. Whereas Liverpool, the way we play, we have wing backs that do that, and our wingers, Mane and Salah, are inside forwards. They cut in. They want to score goals themselves. You rarely, sometimes, but you rarely see Mane or Salah crossing the ball from the wing into the box. You rarely see that. So, you know, I look when Liverpool are trying to do something different when they have no other option. We saw Liverpool-Barcelona 4-0. Shaqiri puts that ball in for Wijnaldum's header. When you've got to try something and got to throw everything at it, when you've got players out like a Salah, yes, Shaqiri can come in and make an impact. But I completely echo what James says. It's all about systems, and Liverpool have got such a rigid 4-3-3 with a CDM. And as Matty said, again, Shaqiri doesn't fit into the first 11. It's only when the only option, like when we played Everton at home and we won 5-2, there were a few people out injured. Shaqiri comes in, Origi comes in. They can be effective, but over a season, it's more moments than actual meat that they offer us.
When you were touching on, James, about like resale value and that, what's your thoughts on Jordan Henderson? Now, I think people have went into a bit of meltdown today about him. He's got 2 years left on his deal. That will then make him 33. Now, he's struggled with injuries the past few seasons. He's probably not going to play every game in a season. So when he gets to 33, that's 2 more years added on to Henderson. What do you think on the Henderson situation? Do we sell him now, or do we let him ride his contract out and let him go for free? Or do we cash in? Because you can be getting 30, 35 million for Jordan Henderson now if he was going somewhere like PSG, couldn't you?
Cashing in for me at the stage that we're at is not an option. It's not an option. We just don't have someone in the club which is ready. They're not ready. Yet you look at Van Dijk, natural leader, great, but Van Dijk's 30. I want a bit of longevity. I want a bit of stability. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you look at the captains we've had. So let's throw it back. Stevie G took over from Sami Hyypiä. Yeah, Sami Hyypiä was a fantastic servant to the club in the whole time that he had the captaincy. Stevie got the captaincy, and look how long he had it for. We then now look at how long Hendo's been captain for. We need that stability. Henderson brings more to the team than just his footballing ability. A lot of rival fans turn around and say, "Oh, look, it's a cheerleader again," so on and so forth. But you need that. You need that. You need a player on the pitch which is going to get tucked into people, call out mistakes, raise people's games. If he sees something he doesn't like, he's pointing it out. He's not quiet. He's pointing it out. And the way that we play football, and I throw it back to 2015 when Klopp came in and we spoke about heavy metal football, you need that. Who's your lead singer? Jordan Henderson is your front man. He's your front man. So without him being there, that's catastrophic for Liverpool Football Club. And that's only talking about on-field. because SS and I exchanged a few messages earlier on, and we were talking about on-field and off-field, and the value of potentially a Gini Wijnaldum and why Gini wasn't given a deal in arguably a very similar position that Henderson is. The difference between Gini and a player like Gini and Henderson is Henderson offers on-field and off-field. Commercially, he is valuable to Liverpool Football Club, and as much as we sit here and we love the footballing side of the game, but a lot of fans hate the off-field and business side of the game. We kind of have to kind of nod our heads to that, because football is a business now. So we have to have commercial entities at Liverpool Football Club, and he personifies that. He personifies it. So it would be a massive mistake to let him go. If we can't agree on something, let the lad run down his contract. He's given everything to Liverpool Football Club. He's given us everything. So I wouldn't begrudge him leaving on a free in 2 years. I wouldn't. But to let him go now, massive mistake. Massive.
Do you think it's just an agent thing though? Like his agent's seen Saul rumour coming in 200 grand a week, and Hendo's sat there thinking, I'm the captain of this club, I've won it all. I should be getting paid what I believe I'm worth. Like Stevie G had a clause in his contract, he was the highest paid player regardless. So Henderson's agents probably asking questions about that, and that could cause leaks like this, couldn't it, as well?
What you're finding as well is that as of next year, agents only get 10%. So you got a lot of agents jumping up and down going, crap, I've got people left on 2-year contracts. I need to do something to maximise my earning potential. So a lot of this is agent driven as well. You look at Haaland to potentially Chelsea. Mino Raiola's looking at that going, damn, I've got one big move left. I need to do this now, because otherwise I ain't going to get my bread. And again, you look at players like Kevin De Bruyne, negotiated his latest Manchester City deal without his agent. Football is becoming, and football players are becoming more and more astute. I watched something, and it always bothers me that I can't find the link to it, but it was a little snippet talking about what they referred to as the LeBron James factor. And it's ever so prominent now in our athletes that we see here in the UK. LeBron James has been incredibly good at leveraging his brand. So what he will do is he'll say, I'm going to sign with a team for this period of time, and that's it. After that, I'm going to go into free agency and I'm going to sign there, and that's it. Football players are doing something very similar. You see deals, whereas we used to see 5-year deals were the common thing. 5-year deals were so common. Then it switched to 4-year deals, super common. Now 3-year deals seem like the more common thing, because players are looking, going, I do a 3-year deal, I could potentially move in the second year. You're only getting players committing to your club for 2 years, realistically, because in the last year of their deal, they can do a move abroad if they want to do. They can do a Bosman at the end of the deal. It's a free for all. So agents are being edged out more and more of the game. Players are taking more and more control of their own brands, and that's all we're seeing. Jordan Henderson knows that he's marketable, and Liverpool, if they do want to tie him down, most certainly need to pay their worth. But if we weren't to tie him down on a 3-year deal, whatever it may be, to let the lad leave at the end of his contract, he's given everything to Liverpool Football Club, and he would go with my blessing.
Absolutely. I really like the debates on Twitter about who is the better captain, Steven Gerrard or Jordan Henderson, because you can flip it. I personally think you can flip a coin. You know, Hendo's won it all. Stevie led by being the best player on the pitch for a very long period of time. Jordan isn't the best player on the pitch. So there's swings and roundabouts really for both of them. But I'm in the same boat. I cannot, for the life of me, think, even if you get him, is it worth the 35 million you get for Jordan Henderson? It's not, because you can't replace him for 35 million. You can't replace the influence on the pitch. You can't replace even like when he came on in the Euros in the semi-final, so against Denmark. I mean, he wasn't great in the final, but in the semi-finals, that period where England had that 3 minutes of possession, it was him orchestrating it. You saw him pointing on the pitch where to pass the ball to, and he did it, and the ball went there. He's that leader that Liverpool would miss. For 35 million, you can't replace that. And you can't replace also, you know, his just desire and his hunger to do well. I genuinely haven't seen that since Steven Gerrard left, that desire and drive and grit and determination really to push everybody and to elevate everybody up to the best that they can be. I haven't seen it since Steven Gerrard left. And Gerrard left before he should have done, I personally think, So I would hate for us to make the same mistake twice in a very short period of time with our two captains who have been so glorious for this football club.
Totally agree. I mean, the challenge that you've got is, and I was, again, SS, you'll back me up on this because we've had this conversation on many a time. Liverpool 2.0, yeah. Where do we go after Klopp? Where do we go after that? Because he's not going to be here forever. I think at the end of his deal, and I'm hoping, I'm praying that he extends, but I part of me doesn't think he will extend. So where do we go after that? We now need to start laying foundations for the likes of Trent, the likes of Curtis Jones, the youth players that are starting to come through, because we've got some decent youth players coming through as well. We have to position the club in a place where we're not going to have another 30 years in the wilderness. Does anybody want to see that? Because I certainly don't. No. I say to my kids all the time, you don't know how lucky you are to be able to experience Liverpool Football Club in a dominant period of time. Since my boys have been alive, they've seen League, Club World Cup, Champions League final, Premier. They've seen everything, which has taken me most of my adult life, or all of my life really, to actually witness my club doing. It's a glorious position to be in, and you have to strengthen from a position of strength.
Yeah. Well, Sir Alex Ferguson, I mean, say what you like about the man, he's the most successful Premier League manager, and there's no two ways about it. And he said, you have to add while you're on top. You have to keep evolving. Every year, Man United signed someone to make their squad better, and he had no qualms about getting rid of the likes of David Beckham when he's thinks, actually, you know what? Now it's your time to go, because we're going to get in Cristiano Ronaldo to take us again to that. And he did, and that's exactly what he did. And he said exactly what you've said. You have to stay on top. There is no point in standing still in football, because if you stand still, you get left behind because everyone else is chasing. And I think I really hope that's not what we are doing. Speaking about additions, I mean, a question to the pair of you and to Daz as well. Do you think, I mean, we are being told there will be more additions. I think that's quite, it's a known secret almost. There will be more additions. And Fabrizio Romano has literally just said actually today that Liverpool will wait for a midfielder because their priority is an attacker. So who do you think would realistically be added to this Liverpool Football Club this window? Who do you think will be added to the team this window?
Go on, SS, because I know you've got some thoughts. I often banter you about your about playing a bit of FIFA. So go on.
Yeah.
No, not a dreamer. Are you a dreamer?
Well,
if you are, you're not the only one, as John Lennon says.
It depends which way they want to go, doesn't it? Because we speak about Liverpool 2.0. Well, for me, the one person in the first 11 that probably should be under the most threat is Firmino in terms of performances over the last 2 years. Yes, people have had drops in performances. Trent had a rough time, but look how he bounced back. Robertson didn't have the greatest season of his career, but he's got better stats than Luke Shaw out last season, if you actually look at it from a stat perspective, assists, games played, etc. So do we go out and buy a striker to replace Firmino in the first 11? I personally think not, in terms of how FSG are acting with contracts and bids and all the rest of it. It just doesn't seem likely. So we try to squeeze every drip out of the players we have. We've seen players leave on freeze. Emre Can, Gini Wijnaldum. And just touching on Gini quickly, talking about Henderson getting a new deal potentially when he's already contracted till he's 33. We've just let a 30-year-old walk out the door in his prime. Let's get that straight. So it depends if we want to go FIFA or we want to go back up, because we've been linked with the likes of Isaac. He had a decent game for Sweden against Spain, and suddenly he was the next big thing, and then he disappeared again. Vlahovic from Fiorentina has also been linked. He gives us a different option, different kind of striker to bring on. Again, when we're trying to something different, if we're against the Burnley, can we put long balls into Firmino? Not really. So that gives us a different option. We know how much we struggled to beat the bottom 6 teams last season. It was the worst form in the entire season. It was Brighton, Burnley, every single team down there, West Brom, all of them. Brighton, we couldn't beat them. So that's on one hand. Do we bring in another option which improves on Origi? Because Origi, I think, played 9 Premier League games last season, didn't score. So that's not going to suddenly become 25 games. He's not favoured by Klopp anymore. So if we move him on, Do we bring in a backup striker? Potentially, yes. However, if you want to compete, Chelsea are chasing Haaland as realistically as that might be. Man City are looking at Kane. Do we need to look a little bit higher up and think maybe we make Firmino either a 10 in a change to a 4-2-3-1 because we've lost Gini, and rotate the midfielders that we have because we know Ox, Kate, and Cater aren't going to be playing very often, or do we really look at it like a Lautaro Martinez and think, someone like that is that someone that we could go and get for 70 million? Because, Liverpool have been building slowly since Klopp came in. He has spent money. I know he's made money by selling assets as well, but, with 30 million on Gini, 30, 40 million on Fabinho, Mane and Salah, similar. And then we went out and we thought, do you know what? To get to that next level, we aren't going to do anything unless we sign a goalie and a centre-back. It just wasn't going to happen. So we had to go and get £75 million defender and a £65 million goalie, because otherwise, if we're all honest, if those two don't join the club, we don't win either of those big trophies that we've just won. It's just not happening. So I feel, as much as I get bantered about it, that we are in a very similar position again. I think we need to go and drop a £70 million on a striker and a £60 million on a midfielder, a Tielemans and a Lautaro Martinez. That's what I would go and get. But as we know, we're in a COVID climate. I understand that. It's not always possible to do. So they need to decide, because, the front three, we've mentioned the midfielders aging. The front three are all 29, 30 as well. They're all getting to that stage. So do we want to become AC Milan in 2007 when the entire 11 get to 35 at the same time and all retire, and 10 years later they're still not qualified for the Champions League? Or do we start to think, actually now, do we move one of those front three on, or do we just relegate one of them to a rotation policy? So I think Jota gives us an option across that front three as well. But personally, I'd go and get a starting number 9.
You make some really good points, SS. Yeah, and I love it when you get into the transfer rants, because they are. I love it. I absolutely love it. And I just think where we are at the moment is that front three has another year together. They have another year. So I look at it from a perspective of, we won the league the year before, yeah? We done that. This year, Liverpool Football Club would have been going into this or the campaign just gone. So if we're rewinding back, thinking we need to retain. Everything would have been set up to retain, yeah? If we weren't in a COVID situation, if we didn't have all those injuries, utopia, we're retaining that league, because we were positioned a lot better than our rivals. So our fan base is becoming really, really reactionary to what's going on around them, going, Chelsea are going for Haaland, City are going for Kane. Oh my God, United have signed Jadon Sancho. Who gives a rat's? Who gives a rat's?
Exactly.
They're playing catch up. They've got to go out and do that. They have to, because they didn't do it last season. So you can almost erase last season. And again, as much as we can't credit where credit's due to Manchester City, phenomenal league campaign, but you can almost erase last season, because no teams really went and spent the kind of money which they wanted to spend. Those teams, the signings they're making this year, in this summer, they would have made those last summer. So they're playing catch up. So we're almost in a position of strength as we stand here. Yes, the Gini departure has weakened us significantly. It has. But we've known for a while, even at the back end of the title winning season, we need to evolve. We need to evolve. Something needs to change here. We need to bring another option. So that priority for a striker, in my eyes, is nothing new. We've needed that for a while. And like you mentioned, I spoke about this on one of our pods in the past as well, about a change in formation. I spoke about a 4-2-3-1. I also spoke about a sort of like a five at the back with wing backs, and a forward kind of thinking option there as well. We just need to tweak things slightly. So could we see a 4-2-3-1 and not replace Gini, because we've got players in the team that can do that? Thiago and Henderson are almost rotation options. None of those guys are going to be able to play the full season. They ain't going to be able to do it. Yeah. So you kind of rotate those players maybe around the Fabinho. You've got a Curtis Jones in the mix who's coming through as well that needs game time in order to flourish. That formation could probably suit a Harvey Elliott as well, playing out wide, Before you know it, you start sticking Mo Salah up top when you bring Harvey Elliott on because he's our main goal threat. We cannot deny it. You play Mo Salah central and Firmino in behind him. You can rotate Mane and Jota. It's starting to look a little bit more attractive, isn't it, lads? And it doesn't look a little bit as much doom and gloom as we think it is. So are we in a position where we're already set and all we're actually looking for is that icing on the cake?
Daz?
Yeah, I agree with you because I just think we need like one or two players to come in and actually, pep it up a little bit because, the heads are exploding with these fans. The rumour mill is it's a joke. It's like you've got these kids that wake up in the morning, they go straight to the telly or the internet, obviously. They get on there and then they just go, oh my God, this person's going here. I don't care. I don't care, like you said, James, I don't care where their other team is getting. I think we would have walked the league last season. We were 5 points clear at Crimbo time, and that's without Van Dijk, but obviously with Gomez going out in November, that really took a hit. But yeah, I'm with you. We only need a big signing, I think, the 60, 70 mil, like you said, SS, and maybe a 30 to 40 mil. And I think we'll be sorted.
Yeah. I think as well, it's really important that what all of us, well, I'm going to contribute and now say I agree as well, but there's no way that Jurgen Klopp and Michael Edwards and co look at what Man United are doing and say, oh, actually, we need to change our whole transfer strategy. Or they look at what Man City or Chelsea are bringing in. They've known, like Jurgen Klopp has openly said, he has known what he's doing 2 years in advance every single time. He knows who he needs to bring in every single window. So regardless of whether Man United are bringing in Sancho and City are linked with Kane and Grealish, it doesn't affect Klopp and Edwards because they know what they was always going to do. They always knew that Genie was leaving. They knew this 6 months ago. And I personally thought the way that Genie handled his situation was first class. Nothing was ever said about it. There was always songs and dances I always felt about Emre Can leaving because it was always like, will he, won't he, will he, won't he? Genie just hush, hush, like dead quiet. Thank you very much. And he's going. So they knew that he was going beforehand. They've known, like you've said, that Firmino is on his way. And it is quite interesting, to be fair, because towards the back end of the season, we saw Oxlade-Chamberlain playing in that position when Firmino was coming off. And Ox said on Twitter, on the Liverpool Twitter, saying, like, watch out, Bobby, I'm coming for your spot. I can see Oxlade-Chamberlain playing in there. I really can see him playing in that false 9 role or even that 10 role. So, Klopp and Edwards, as much as perhaps... Again, I don't want to say our younger listeners because that makes me sound like conceited and old, but some of the listeners who think we need to do what Man United are doing, we need to do what Man United are doing. Klopp and Edwards don't care. They don't care because they've already had this plan. They've had this summer planned out 2 summers ago.
Well, also, I don't understand some fans as well. They're going off about FSG. But FSG have done the same business from day one, where to buy players, they sell players. And I tried to tell some of my mates as well. I'm just like, this is the way it's been. It's not just going to change one summer. But and these players that you've sold didn't want to play for Liverpool anymore. Coutinho's money got us Van Dijk and Alisson, and then we went on to win the Champions League and the Premier League, and Coutinho went to win what? A move to Bayern Munich. Coutinho. And
what a Wally.
Now Barca are trying to get rid of him.
Yeah, this is the thing. I totally agree. And I always say on Twitter, Liverpool do not deviate from transfer targets. If we want a player, I can assure you we get that player. It's as simple as that. We do not deviate from transfer targets. So all of this euphoria and uproar in the January when we should have signed a centre-back, they knew they were getting Konate. They knew it was happening. They knew. So I always throw back to an interview that Jurgen Klopp did when he said, I'm not going to sign someone for the sake of it. I'm not going to do business now that I know I'm going to do in the summer. And people miss that little hook. They knew that Konate was coming, so it's just a case of us being patient. And don't get me wrong, sometimes me and SS sit there and go, "Oh my God, will you just bloody sign someone?" You know what I mean? We all get that moment inside where that that childish Liverpool fan comes out because you just want to see your club do well. But sometimes you just need to kind of sit back and go, "Do you know what? The custodians of the club, and they are only custodians. Let's be clear. FSG are not going to be here forever. They are just custodians of the club. They are going to do what is right for the club at this given point, at this given time." And whilst just sticking with the FSG point really, really quickly, because I feel it's a big thing. Whilst FSG have done some wrongs, they've also done some goods. They've done some real things good. You look at the training complex, we've now got world-class facilities. We've got a world-class manager. We've got a stadium which is about to increase to 60,000. You know, everything they said that they would do, they've done it. They've put their money where their mouth is. So I feel the fan base kind of have to cut them a bit of slack in some areas. When they made a few stupid mistakes like the Super League, reckless decision, I feel they went along for the ride because as owners of a football club, they are still relatively inexperienced. You look at Roman Abramovich, he's been in the Premier League, 15 years now? Maybe more? He's an experienced owner. City Group, 10, 12 years, maybe more. Maybe Abramovich is probably 18 years. City Group is probably 12 years. Yeah, they're experienced owners. They've been doing this for a long time. The Glazers, they're nearly 20 years, the Glazers. They've been doing this a long time. Stan Kroenke, whilst he's only been majority Arsenal owner for probably the last 6 or 7 years, he's been involved in that club for nearly 15 years. FSG is still very, very young in terms of their stewardship of this club, so they're going to make mistakes. It's up to us as a fan base to say, do you know what? You messed up, but don't do it again. We move on and we get behind the club again.
I agree. Well, let's talk about outgoings. Who would you like to see leave the club? And with the outgoing players that have been rumoured, who do you want to stay?
I won't let SS go first because he'll sack off the whole team.
Brilliant.
So I'll be conservative and I'll allow my my co-host to fill in the gaps. So SS, if you don't agree, please stop me and say why. Yeah.
Okay. Fair enough.
So we'll go Origi. I think his time at the club's up, and I don't necessarily think it's from a disrespectful perspective. I feel he's done everything that he can do, and also the lad needs to go and play football. He's 26. He needs to go and play. So, yeah. Shaqiri we've spoken about. I think his time at the club's up as well, solely because we just don't know where he fits into our current system or a system going forward. Naby Keita. I think the end is near for Naby. How long can we continue to persist with a player which we signed under so much promise? And I feel like we signed him a year too soon, only because we signed him, then loaned him back, didn't we? For that period of time, we kind of left him there. And in that period, us as fans had all that opportunity to watch his games and go on YouTube and watch clips and get so excited and so on and so forth, and all this build-up and this euphoria around this signing. I remember seeing some guys going, yeah, we signed a player that's better than Kante. I was like, oh, my God. You know what I mean? So I just think it's now time to have a clean break with Naby Keita. Again, the lad needs to go somewhere where he can enjoy his football and be effective. Harry Wilson, again, he needs to go and play. Every year, the transfer rumour swells about Harry Wilson. Without fail, as always, is he going to stay? Is he going to go? And he has a game at pre-season. You think, oh, this lad's got it, and then he's nowhere near the team. He needs to move on. Grujic, again, time's come now, lad. I've not seen enough to cut it at the top level. You need to go. Nico Williams is another one as well. I just don't feel that he has enough quality going backwards in terms of what he possesses going forwards. he's actually a right winger, but he's playing fullback because we don't have right wingers. So we have to try and shoo him into the team somewhere when he plays. So for me, it's time for him to go. SS, have I missed anybody?
No, you weren't as conservative as I thought you would be, to be fair. Just on the ones that you've mentioned, I think you're completely right with all of them. I think Naby Keita is an interesting one because he's actually only got 2 years left on his deal now. You know, we signed him so long ago, and he's been on the treatment table for so long, i.e. 3 years. I think a lot of players this season are on last chance saloon. I really do, because you've got the likes of Oxlade-Chamberlain and Keita, who are both vying for that.
Oxlade.
Well, exactly. They're both vying for that fourth spot, I would say. And now Gini's left, you would expect Henderson, Fabinho, and Thiago to start in the big games when they're all fit. You would expect if one of them were to be missing or injured or suspended, it would usually be a Keita or an Ox to step in that big game. Curtis Jones is great, but is he ready for the top games? I'm not sure yet. I think Curtis Jones is amazing. I can't wait to see him become one of the best players in our team. But for me, Keita and Ox are a little bit like the Origi Sturridge when they were both vying for that backup role. You know, it was a one or the other, and Origi won that battle. So I think one of them go next summer. Whichever one doesn't play enough this season, whichever one does worse than the other, Keita or Ox go next summer for me because of the contract situations they're in. Next summer, they'll both only have a year left on their deal. So one of them leave. We've lost Gini already. Hendo, as much as I think he will stay, you know, it's rumoured. So you don't want to get rid of all your midfielders straight away. And James Milner is going to be gone as well. And as much as we think he won't play that much, he still does feature. You know, he is another body in that midfield. And God, did we need bodies last season or what? So, yeah, I agree with you on all of them. You know, Wilsons, Origis, people that aren't really contributing and haven't contributed at all or even been at the club. In terms of other players to go out, yeah, I think one position that we're absolutely stacked in is centre-back now, which is a weird thing to say. We've got the four. We know who the four are. You've got Ben Davies, you've got Reece Williams, and you've got Nat Phillips. Now, we don't need all three. Let's be real. We probably need one of those three, just in case, because you've got Van Dijk, you've got Gomez, you've got Matip. Two of them have coming back from one long-term injury. Gomez has had multiple long-term injuries, but they've mainly been impact injuries. But Matip is constantly getting 3 weeks, 6 week in between little niggles throughout the season. He's looked great in pre-season, Joel Matip, but he's not going to suddenly play 38 games. It's not happening. I tell you now, he's not playing 3 games in a row. He's not doing it. So do we keep a Ben Davies or do we keep a Nat Phillips? I think Reece Williams probably gets loaned out. Where's the value? I think Nat Phillips is probably more valuable than Ben Davies. So could we get a 10, 15 million pounds for him from a Burnley, from a Brighton, and keep Ben Davies as 5th choice? Or do we just say, you know what, Ben Davies, you're an emergency signing. In the end, we didn't really need you. So thanks for nothing really, but off you go to Celtic for 2.5, 4 mil. And we keep Nat Phillips as a proven player at 5th choice, which I don't think he would actually mind too much. If we said, you know, you're playing in the cups, we've got 3 centre-backs above you that can't play every week, mate, you might have to feature here and there. So I think probably one of those go. Other than that, I think you've mentioned Shaqiri. I think Woodburn will finally be leaving. I think Grujic will be leaving. You've mentioned Wilson. You've mentioned Nico Williams as well. I think Kostas Tsimikas is the only other one, just before you come in, mate, is the only other one, again, is on the last chance saloon because he's behind probably the most consistent player in our team in Andy Robertson, who can play 90 minutes, 50 times a season, completely fine. So to try and get in there is very tough, especially when you've struggled with injuries yourself. So whenever there is a chance to play, you might not even be fit to play. So I think he has a big season ahead of him. I'd like to see him be given the chance here and there because Robbo can't play every week. And yeah, Trent, again, I think we need to bring in a fullback backup. Whether someone like James Justin that can play left back or right back. I think that's the last position I'd mention.
So I suppose
no, sorry, pal. Go on.
Sorry, I was just going to say it leads nicely to my next question and final question as we wind down here, really, and it's a question for all 4 of us. So I'm going to chip in and get involved in this as well. But I'm going to go last, so you guys can have first pick, and I can just swoop in. If you could sign anyone, and I do want to sort of keep it realistic. I think if you can sign anyone realistically, so we're not talking about Kylian Mbappe, we're not talking about Haaland. Unfortunately.
If you could,
That was God.
if you could sign anyone for the current Liverpool team, who would it be and why? One player.
Oof. Who's going
I
first?
don't mind who goes first. I don't mind who goes first.
Shall I go?
Go on, mate.
All right. One player.
Realistic.
Realistic. It's got to be Yuri Telemans. It's got
Good
to be.
shout.
It's got to be. And I'll explain why. So everyone keeps on harping on about replacing Gini Wijnaldum, and everybody's forgetting that. And also couple that with some of the bollocks that I've seen on Twitter that Liverpool have ruined Gini Wijnaldum because look how many goals he scores for Holland. For me, if you're running on the timeline, you're saying that you have no understanding of football. Gini Wijnaldum was brought to the club for three reasons. The first reason was his ability in terms of his availability. He was always available. If you look at his record for Newcastle, very rarely missed a game. Record for PSV, very rarely missed a game. So that was one of the key reasons and key factors in Gini Wijnaldum coming to the club. You then look at his ball retention. So his ability to get the ball and not be dispossessed. Again, that was a key factor in why he was brought to the club. The third thing is his engine. So the fact that he can continue to run at high levels for an extended period of time. If you look at Yuri Telemans, he gives you all of that. His availability is very, very good. His ball retention is very, very good. And his ability to run for an extended period of time is improving. It's not at the level of a Gini Wijnaldum, but he's still fairly young. So his game management is probably going to be different to what Gini Wijnaldum's is. And game management isn't about necessarily keeping the ball. Individual game management is about how you progress throughout the game, your energy levels, knowing when to run, knowing when to relax off the ball, catch your breath in certain periods of time. That's game management, yeah? Yuri Telemans personifies all of that. Where he differs slightly from Gini Wijnaldum and what he can offer in that particular role, he's more of a forward-thinking player in terms of his passing ability, and he's now adding goals to his game as well. So this is why I talk about Liverpool 2.0. In terms of his youth, he's a player that could be at Liverpool for 5-6 years, so exactly like Gini Wijnaldum was. If we're going to replace Gini, or we're going to go into the midfield position to find a player, longevity has to be attached, because we can't just add someone in just for the sake of it. We talk about Sorrell, and yes, he's good. Again, availability is crucial. His ball retention is crucial. But is he a player that's going to stay at Liverpool for 5 years? He's not. So if I was to recruit, my top target, even in front of a forward, would be Yuri Telemans. And let's not forget, we've been linked with him for a very, very, very long time. This isn't something that's just come out of the blue. We were linked with him under the Rodgers era when he was at Anderlecht. Liverpool just turned their nose up and said, you haven't quite got Premier League experience yet. But guess what? When we're ready, we'll come back.
Yeah.
Go on, SS.
Well, that was also my number one target, so I'll have to talk about my number two.
We agreed.
Wrap that up perfectly. It's not often that we do, but yeah, like James said, availability. I think Tielemans played 38 Premier League games last season, 37 the season before. So if that doesn't shout Genie 2.0, then I don't know what does. My second target, because I agree, midfield is the obvious one, because we've just lost a very Genie Wijnaldum shaped hole in our midfield. But I've already mentioned him, and again, you say realistic. All right, it's not Mbappe and Haaland, but again, the one thing that we struggled to do last season, as much as we had centre backs out injured, was to actually score goals. We really struggled to score. Of our traditional front three, realistically, only Salah continued the kind of record that we expect, didn't he? Realistically, we're getting one out of that front three last season, being a consistent goal scorer. And as much as I think Sadio Mane will hopefully rebound and come back to something more like we've seen, I don't feel that Firmino has really shown consistency enough for 2 seasons as the main man. Whether he becomes a 10, whether he becomes a rotational option, whether he drops into midfield potentially as he gets older. But for me, he's not at that level anymore. You know, he's been here a long time. I think he was here even before Klopp came in. You know, we've never really gone out and bought a striker under Klopp ever. He's not gone out and bought a number 9. So, you know, he's got good experience. He's brought Lewandowski into Dortmund, so you know he knows what he's doing with strikers. So he'll have his own targets, I'm sure. But again, I mentioned it, and you know, Lautaro Martinez for me is the guy that I would look at, because Inter, it wasn't, what was it, 2 months ago they were saying they're in serious financial trouble. They've sold Hakimi. I don't think 60 million. Sorry, go on.
Conte left.
Yeah, exactly. Conte doesn't leave.
That's why Conte left, because they had no money and they had to sell his best players.
Yeah, so and if selling Hakimi fixes that situation, Conte's not going to walk out of a club that's just won the league because he's lost his right back. Let's be real. So there's clearly got to be more sales to be done. So if Inter need to sell, I don't think Lukaku suits Liverpool's style. We've tried Benteke. I know Lukaku is better than him, but they're similar. They're big guys. I think Lautaro Martinez is perfect. You know, look how good Aguero's been in the Premier League. I think he'd be very similar to that. Argentine. He got 17 goals last season in 38 games. That's 1 in 2, basically. I think he could be improved again under Jurgen Klopp. I think he'd be the perfect option going forward. Might not be this summer, because I agree with James. I think this front three plus a Jota has another season in them. Completely agree with that. But I think if we get a Tielemans this summer, I think next summer we'll be looking at the striker.
And I'm with James. It's Tielemans all day for me, like all day. He just looks like a Klopp player, like a Liverpool player, and it seems like he wants to come. And I agree. Liverpool did look at him. He wasn't ready, you know, or we would have got him. You saw how he progressed this season, and what like smashing goal he scored in the cup final, just like out of nowhere. You know, very Gerrard-esque goal as well. But for me, he's number 1. Number 2, I like Rafinha. I just do. I like the low centre of gravity. You know, can get past players. He's fast. Would that kind of put Harvey Elliott back? That's what I would think, you know. But number 1 for me is Tielemans all day.
Agreed.
All 3 of those, I would be, you know, salivating at the prospect of all 3. And I was actually going to go Rafinha myself, just purely because that's what I talk about on the Spaces. I think it's realistic. But I think if we're going to spend, I mean, I personally think Tielemans, and I'm just going to do this for devil's advocate. If we're going to sign, I mean, Tielemans is going to cost what, 60-70 million pounds. I think.
Don't you
Premier
say
League
that?
Goal scorer.
Don't you say that?
Yeah, I did. No, I'm not going to say Daka. I promise I won't, because that ship's now sailed. But I really like Nicola Barella. And as a midfield option, I think he would probably cost the same amount as a Yuri Tielemans. I just really like him. I just think he's so smooth. He's so silky. I saw a bit of a, you know, not just obviously in the Euros, but in Serie A as well. He was phenomenal last season, and he's just got everything. He's that box-to-box midfielder who can create, he can score, he can assist, he can defend. I wouldn't have him over Tielemans. I wouldn't have him over Tielemans, because Tielemans has that Premier League experience and that Premier League quality, and the boy can bang, James quite rightly said. Yeah. So I would have Tielemans, but I also would really like to see Barella in a Liverpool shirt as well if Tielemans is a no-go. All the talk recently is about Saul.
Italian fans do well, do they?
Man. It just gives me Aquilani vibes. I just can't do it. I just can't do it.
No, Alberto Aquilani. I know that was one of the most disappointing transfers in Liverpool Football Club's history.
It was painful.
Oh man,
very, very painful.
It was painful. He was still here under Rodgers. Can you imagine how long he was at the club and did full? Like when we signed him, the euphoria around that whole signing. I remember, like everyone's like, "Yeah, he's the next best thing." And I remember watching videos of him thinking, this lad is sensational. Goals, box to box, taking people on. And he got to Liverpool and it was,
Yeah, yeah. He had that awful injury, didn't he? And then the next season he was loaned out, and then he came back, and it was just, yeah, it was a complete nightmare. Especially when you're thinking that Xabi Alonso left and Aquilani came in, it was just the icing on the cake for that as well. But no, I think they're all really good. Yeah.
Well, the red flag goes up as soon as you go the next best thing.
Yeah.
It's usually downhill.
That killed Joe Allen's career, didn't it? The Welsh Shabby.
Cheers for that, Brendan. Nice throwing at him for that.
I'm sure Joe Allen was really appreciative of that as well, to be fair.
Of course.
Poor guy.
But chickens.
But yeah, I think they're all realistic targets that we've said, and I really like Lautaro Martinez, because if Inter do need to sell them, we should be raiding that all day long. So, but yeah, thank you so much for everyone to listening. I know that we normally do half-hour podcast, but with guests we want to go an hour and keep everybody entertained, and such interesting and insightful information really that's been going on. So we kept it going, but that is all that we have time for today on The Room. It will be obviously next Tuesday when we see you all, where there will be another week of transfer news and roundups, and hopefully some of those links that we've spoken about might have a bit more legs by then. So a big thank you to our guests today from the Red Sea podcast, both James and SS, and we hope you had a great time collaborating with us as well. So yeah, thank you for listening to us and watching us on YouTube, and please don't forget to subscribe every Tuesday on Spotify, Apple, iTunes, and obviously YouTube as well. Until then though, stay safe, and as always, up the Reds.